Hello, and welcome everybody to this session. It is Star-Crossed and Spellbound. My name is Melissa Thom, and I am a middle school teacher librarian in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I'll be moderating this session. From swoony first kisses to heart-tugging twists, these three standout YA romances capture all the magic, mess, and meaning of falling in love. Please join Kate Christensen, the author of Sacred and the Divine, Yueh Yang, author of The Omen Girl, and Ingrid Ochoa, The Kiss Bet Volume 2, as they share a first look at their genre-blending stories of love, identity, and the paths we take to find both. And let me just introduce the audience to these three wonderful authors. So first we have Kate Christensen, who is the author of The Sacred and the Divine, which was published by Disney. This book is history, romance, and the occult come together in a mesmerizing tale of sisterhood, fate, and the darkness lurking in our world. Kate is the author of many adult novels and 2 food-centric memoirs. This is her first YA novel, and she hopes it's not her last. I do too. She lives in northern New Mexico with her husband and their 2 dogs. Welcome, Kate. I'm so glad you could join us. Next, we have Yueh Yang, the author of The Omen Girl, which was published by Wattpad Books. Sozo, an Omen girl reviled as a monster, has to hide the truth of who she is in order to fly in the decade race of stars and win a wish. The penalty, should she be discovered, is death. Yueh is a Canadian immigrant born to a Korean mother and a Taiwanese father. Moving as a child from the small summer island of Taiwan to the vast winter wonderland of Canada set in her a love and awe for the beauty of different worlds. Her works are a colorful blend of science fiction and fantasy, and often explore the premise of barriers, be it language or otherwise. She is a piano teacher by day and an avid consumer of all things movies and anime by night. She lives in Toronto. Welcome, Yueh. Glad you could join us. And third, to round out our panel, is Ingrid Ochoa, the author of The Kiss Bet Volume 2, which was published by Wattpad Books. In this adorable coming-of-age story, Sarah Lynn has decided now is the time. She is going to make her first kiss, something special and magical, happen. Ingrid is a Mexican writer, illustrator, cat owner, and full-time webtoon creator. Welcome, Ingrid. Glad you could join us. So to kind of kick our panel off, I have one question that I would like all of you to answer, and we'll start with Kate and then followed by Yueh and then Ingrid. So the question is, each of your books has a romantic storyline, but they're all blended with something else, fantasy, history, or coming of age comedy. How did you balance romance with all those other elements? So Kate, take it away. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Thank you for reminding me and not letting me talk for 5 minutes on mute. Not that I'll talk for 5 minutes. It felt like second nature to blend teenage magic and young burgeoning witches. It's about 3 sisters in 1848 Cape Cod who discover on their 16th birthdays that they have various magic powers. And this book is about them sort of coming into these powers. And I think writing about adolescence, especially teenage girls, is an incredible opportunity to get into darkness, sexuality, and power. And the 3 kind of intertwine in this book. And the romance part is just as important, I think, as the magic part, and the darkness. That I think it's a counterbalance, but I also think in terms of the plot, it felt like a triple helix, sort of twisting together the burgeoning sexuality of our heroine Daisy, who's the youngest of the 3 sisters, and along with her sort of bungling a spell at the beginning of the book, and that sets in motion the darkness that takes over the town. And of course, there's various people that sort of spark sexual feelings in all the sisters through the book. And I think each of these three prongs is a perfect counterbalance to all the other ones. And like I said, this is my first YA novel, so it's not like writing adult romance, which is full on, you know, sex. This is about discovering, it's more a process of discovery than experience. And I think that's true of the magic powers too. And I think understanding the demon is similarly, it's a teenage experience. It's sort of like, what the hell have I done? What is this thing taking over our town? And what are these feelings I have? And what is this power I have? And so it's like a perfectly calibrated, balanced triangle, I think. And that's what it felt like.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Yueh.
So I guess for me, it wasn't really about balancing because the love has always been the meat and bones of the story to me. The characters and their interactions with each other was what was most important to me as a writer. And the world just kind of naturally grew around that. So I guess put another way, the Stardust and the Sweeping Vistas was kind of just the stage for the play of the characters. Yeah, very short answer.
Do you want to add a little bit, just a little bit about the story, since I didn't say much about it? Do you want to give readers who might not have had an experience with the first book and then now this new second one, just a little taste?
Sure, yeah. So it is, I like to call it a Ghibli punk because I'm a huge Ghibli fan. So Miyazaki movies, so like Kiki's Delivery Service, Spirited Away. So the magic of this book is very much inspired by the magic of Miyazaki. We've got flying, we've got stars, we've got bonding with stars, and we've got creating spells using stars. And yeah, it's inspired by the place that I grew up, which is Taiwan. It's inspired by the night markets and the food there. Yeah, and it's about this girl who has been very mistreated by the society that she's living in. And so she has a lot of anger. And she's been brought up by this kind of shadowy mentor figure who is harnessing her anger in order to enact revenge against the people who have hurt them. And so she kind of has to hide who she is in order to participate in this race of stars. Because whoever can win this deadly race, they can win a wish, any wish. Um, so yeah, at the moment, well, at the beginning of the story, they're going to use this witch probably for nefarious ends, but as the story goes, she enters the competition and she meets new friends, meets a cute boy, and then things kind of start changing. Her heart starts changing. Yeah.
Thank you. And Ingrid.
For me, it's a romance story through and through, kind of. There's it's a very much coming of age story. It's based in high school. It's all these teenagers growing up and trying to figure out their emotions with romance, and it's a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of comedy. But it's all inspired of like me growing up as a teenager in high school and dealing with those feelings. So I don't balancing it, I didn't even think about that. I was just kind of trying to write my feelings of being a teenager and like what it was like trying to discover. I mean, I still feel very much like that, like with dating. I'm still in the dating thing and just trying to figure out all of those emotions that happened at the very beginning when I first started dating, and just discovering yourself, discovering your feelings. And yeah, so it came pretty naturally, mostly because it's experiences that are personal, kind of. I mean, it's not based on a true story, but it's based on things we've all experienced at some point in our lives. So yeah.
Well, and I'm going to actually start with you, Ingrid, for the next question, because you kind of answered it a little bit. So I'm going to shift it a little bit for you. And then the question is, how did you find the right voice for your protagonist? And how much of your own teen self do you see in that person? And you kind of answered that a little bit, but one of my follow-up questions for you specifically is, do you identify more strongly with one of your characters over another?
I feel like I've started analyzing it more as people ask me these questions, because when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just kind of like figuring out the characters. But I see myself so much in my protagonist, and it's very subconscious where I'm like, well, this is what I would do in this situation. So I kind of write that. And these are the literal feelings that I was feeling when I started writing the story. A lot of those relationships that Sarah Lynn, my main character, goes through with her best friend. Like in my story, she has this kind of romance. Oh, sorry, my cat. She has this kind of romance happening with her best friend that she's trying to figure out their feelings, and also like these other guys. So there's like a few guys that she's like, oh, I like this guy, but he likes me, love triangle. So all of those things are things I experience, kind of, not to the full extent. A lot of it is kind of fantasies where I'm like, oh, I wish like all of these guys, but yeah, it is very much inspired. I see myself so much in my main character. But like I said, as I've tried to analyze it more, I feel like there are some other characters that I like. I don't want to give out too much because my story is really long. This is just volume 2, but later on in the story, there are other characters that come in that adulter versions of what I am more like now, that I see myself in those characters as well. And me trying to like learn myself a little bit. But yeah, long answer, but yeah, I see myself in a lot of my characters.
Oh, thank you. And that's exciting to know that there are going to be many more additions coming out in the future. So Kate, did you catch the question? How did you find the right voice for your protagonist, and how much of your own teen self do you see in them?
We started out, my co-writer Melissa Henderson and I started out in first person. And this has been in as we were writing, we were thinking of projecting it as book 1 of a trilogy, and each sister gets her own book, and each sister gets her own voice and her own story and her own particular sort of magical realm. But we decided that it's unclear if it's going to be a trilogy, so it might be a standalone. So we decided on third person. And thank you, I agree. So we decided on third person for Daisy, but centering it third person limited. It's all seen through the youngest sister's eyes. And we settled on the sort of structure of the fool's journey. And the book gets into astrology, it gets into crystals, it gets into tarot, obviously, very much. But it gets into other and herbal stuff, and other realms of woo-woo, kind of, as I called it when I was a New Yorker. I don't call it that anymore. But the whole idea of her voice was that she's on the fool's journey. Because she's the youngest sister, because she's an Aries, because she's 16 and just discovering everything. The Fool's Journey takes you through the entire tarot deck, from the Fool back to the Fool. So the Fool is card 0. So each chapter is one of the tarot cards as she goes through the Fool's journey. And so for us, her voice was, again, it's discovery rather than experience. This kind of fresh, wide-eyed 16-year-old. This is exactly how I was at 16, making all kinds of mistakes, getting crushes on the wrong guys, feeling tension with her sisters, feeling like her mother is a mystery to her. And it's a family of a mother and 3 sisters. Their father is dead, and they live in a humble little cottage. Their mother gives music lessons. So it's a lot like my family growing up, which was a single mother, poor, 3 sisters, a lot of music. We weren't magical, if we would have liked to have been, but in our imaginations we were. And so this sort of takes all the things that I felt as a teenager, which is desire for magic powers, because I had no power at all, and the mystery of all the darkness I saw around me, which is real, especially I think in adolescence, and you don't understand it. And also like The idea that you don't know anything, but you do. And so it's this process of like her discovering what she knows and discovering that the fool's journey, I won't give away the ending, but I will say that the fool's journey, and if you know tarot, this is just, you know, common knowledge, it repeats itself. You don't finish it. This is why you go from the fool to the fool, because the fool's journey never ends and you're always a fool. And so it was really fun. It was really fun to create a voice like that, and a voice that's sort of it's not at all cynical. She's completely open and asking, you know, who am I? What is all this? You know, what are these feelings?
Oh, and I just have to say, there has to be a second book. Come on. Like the ending, there has to be a second book, in my opinion. So I hope.
Thank you so much. I hope our editor is listening.
I hope so too, because let me tell you, I'll be very disappointed. But thank you for that answer. And I look forward to future questions going into a little bit more of some of the things you just said. So Yueh, what about you?
So Sozo, my protagonist, actually started out as a character from a fanfic from a completely different media. So she was very much that character, very headstrong, very gruff, very rough around the edges. So she stayed similar, like she kept a lot of those characteristics in this now original work. And I've never actually really thought about comparing her to my teen self, but now that we are considering that question, it's making me realize how much of my teen self is actually in there. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Teen me was just trying to survive, which is exactly what Sozo was trying to do. And I definitely felt like I had to wear a mask just to get through my day to day. So yeah, lots of me in her.
Wow. Yeah, because you grew up in Canada,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Mhm.
So that's a pretty powerful statement, you know, that you felt like you had to wear a mask, and that's such a huge part of her character. I mean, I didn't feel as the reader I really got to know her very well until like even at the end I felt like I still had questions. Like, you know,
Mhm.
that she just kind of kept lots of herself hidden. Which is, but I have a good follow-up question in a little bit, so I'm excited to talk to you in a little bit about Sozu a little bit more. Um, so thank you for all those answers. The next question is for Kate. And you mentioned briefly in your last response that you have so many different aspects, you and the co-writer, of tarot cards, which I don't know a lot about, but now I'm fascinated and I started researching some things like on the side as I was reading, and spiritualism, historical occultism. So what kind of research did you do, or your personal experience? What do you have with those that helped you write the story? Just tell us a little bit about how that went, because it's all very organized and I love the beginning and the end and the fool's journey. I just think it's so fascinating.
Thank you. I personally didn't know anything really about tarot. I loved the idea of tarot, but this idea came from Melissa de la Cruz. This is published under her imprint. And she approached me with this idea, like, will you write a book about tarot sisters or a trilogy or like some YA like thing about tarot sisters? And I was like, I don't know anything about tarot, YA. I know about sisters. I could do that. But my friend Melissa Henderson, in fact, is a healer. She heals with, she's also a great writer, but she's a healer with I want to say Reiki. She'll kill me if I get it wrong, but
I think Reiki, maybe. Do they
thank
say?
you. Thank you. She does hands-on healing like Daisy, so that's where that came from. But we did a tremendous amount of research into tarot. In fact, I pulled a card. I now own 3 decks, and I pulled a card for this panel, and I pulled the Sun. And this is a really crazy old deck. It's like, I don't even know what it is. I got it from a friend. By the way, a tarot deck has to be given to you. You can't buy it. But I moved to Taos, New Mexico from New England 4 years ago. And so I wrote this book in Taos. And if you know anything about Taos, New Mexico, you'll think about dream catchers, definitely tarot, definitely like candles and sage and like all kinds of spiritual stuff, the sacred mountain. So I felt like moving here was sort of the beginning of my research for this book. So I said yes to the project as long as Melissa could write it with me, because she has read every YA book ever written and has a more of a spiritual bent than I did, but I do now. Because the more I research tarot, the more beautiful it is, and the more sense it makes, and the more sort of mysterious it is, because it's all about interpretation, which is how our brains are set up. We want to interpret things. We want to lay out cards that have beautiful pictures and say, you know, this makes sense in terms of a story. This is a narrative. We create the narrative from the cards. So I don't know about magic, but I do know about stories. And I feel like tarot has a lot of stories. And in terms of research, we researched the hell out of this book. It was like we needed to put our brains in 1848 Cape Cod. And that's what we did for the time it took to write the book. We researched trains, and we researched the life of people of color in Cape Cod in 1848. We researched attitudes toward witches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So every single chapter is steeped in this sort of learning curve that we were on. Because to write a book, you have to write it with authority, and to write about a different time and place that you're not imagining is a different thing. Writing a historical novel from an imagined place, which is kind of what I've always done. You have to get it right. And so that was as much a part of it as the dialogue and the story and the plot and all of it. The atmosphere was getting it right. And I hope we did. If we didn't, it's our fault, but we did our best.
Well, and the other cool thing, because I have like I had the print like a PDF that I got to read, and every chapter has the card, like you said, and then there's a quote. I love the quote that goes along with the chapter. So I just thought you just had so many different elements that I appreciated as a reader. And then the other thing, I'm a super nerd. The vocabulary in this book, I had to look up so many words as I was reading that I had no idea what they meant. I kept a list even. So I just thought that was really cool too. It's been a long time that I read something that there was a lot of words that I just didn't know. So that was kind of fun too. So
we tried to make the language appropriate to the time as well. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for noticing also the graphics, which I really love.
yeah,
I think
they're
they did a great job.
I agree. All right. So Yueh, I'm going to go to you next. And you were talking about Sozo and how she has so much anger. And the question I came up with when I was like thinking about questions, it says, I really was so invested and so frustrated with her through so much of the story that she just exudes also self-loathing. Like she does not believe that she deserves to be loved, which just like hurt my heart so much because it was just over and over and over that she kept like doing things to self-sabotage, and just the way that she didn't believe other people could care about her. But even though she kept pushing people away, her two friends eventually, well, Lumi, who when you read, you'll kind of find out what happens to her, and Naki, they just really tried to befriend her, and Naki throughout the whole story. So I'm just curious, could you talk a little bit about the choices you made for the personalities and the actions of these characters? You've kind of touched on a little bit, but what do you really hope that readers will take away from meeting them?
Well, I guess foundationally, I've always been a huge sucker for the sunshine boy trope, or for like the gender bent version of the manic pixie dream girl. So kind of like Jack from Titanic or Wayman from Everything Everywhere. So in that sense, Sozo and Naki's personalities were kind of made in tandem with one another. So if Naki is sunny, then Sozo would be kind of the stormy and grouchy one. And Lumi, on the other hand, was definitely made to be Sozo's foil, to kind of mirror kind of almost Sozo's ideal. And she kind of resents Lumi for it too, because she's this holy veiled being who's happy all the time, who makes friends really easily, and everybody loves her. So there's definitely that tension there as well. And what I hope for readers to take away, yeah, honestly, I just want readers to know that they are worthy, even if they don't feel worthy, and that they're loved, even if they don't feel like they deserve it. So basically everything I wrote in the acknowledgements. And it's all the same lessons that Sozo learned.
Awesome. Yeah. And also just the ending of your book, I don't know. Like it was, I just can't wait for readers, other people that I know to read it so I can talk to them about it because there's just so many questions I have about so many things. And yeah, it was an interesting, I actually wanted to ask you why or how you chose the ending, but I didn't think I really could because I felt like that would be hard to answer without giving away too much. So maybe you and I can talk at some point in the future offline.
Okay.
Because I just
Sure
really have. All right. So my next question is for Ingrid. And I did a little research because I noticed when I was looking, I think maybe on Goodreads or somewhere that originally the Kiss Bet was 20, like it came out in 2020. Like there was a publication date of that. I'm like, oh, but it looks like it's just coming out, and the second one is brand new, like out in the library. So I found out that it was originally published on Webtoon in 2019. And you talked about how this is a very long series, that many more are coming. So could you talk a little bit about that process from going from where it started to then becoming the book that we see now?
Mm-hmm. So currently on Webtoon, I am in episode 210-ish plus. So there's 4 seasons so far, and there's gonna be another. So it's been a really long writing journey that I every week since like 2020, I write a new episode, which is like maybe 3 or 4 chapters as a whole. I mean, 3 or 4 episodes make like a whole chapter comparatively to a book. Um, but I started it as a hobby back in 2017. I was just writing to release my feelings of these boys and my friends and what I was kind of experiencing, and um all my emotions, I feel them really strongly, and I like writing about it because I feel connected to readers that experience the same thing. Anyways, going off tangent, but those were my emotions at the time. So I started writing back in 2017. I was just doing sketches that I would upload, and then I got contacted by Webtoon. They liked my stuff, and I've been posting ever since. And there's a lot of content out there. If you don't have the patience to wait for the next volume, you can go to Webtoon and read the rest. But my books are fully redrawn from the original stuff. So I redrew everything mostly because I'm a perfectionist, and everything that I drew in those first initial like 20 episodes, I did back in like 2016, 17, and my art has completely changed at this point. And so I just had to do it for myself to redraw the whole beginning so it kind of connects with the art style of the rest of the series. So it's been a long journey, and it's been so much fun to revisit the first episodes again and see where my young mind was back in the day, and my feelings that I had when I first started writing were like so inspired, and I wish to go back to young Ingrid when I used to write like that. Right now it feels a little bit like a job, but I still enjoy it. But I just remember the passion that it had to come out of me back in the day, and it's so fun. I just need to find the inspiration constantly to feel like that. But yeah, it's been a long journey writing all of that.
Wow. Can I ask, and how old were you when you started writing these?
I was around 26,
Okay.
27. Yeah. So I was still not super young, but when I look back, the first time that I wrote the concepts of this story, I was 18 years old, which is the main character in my story. And I remember that I always had that idea, and I'm always writing comics, like little comics everywhere. And I kind of wrote the first chapter back in whatever age it was when I was 18 years old. The year, I don't know. I'm an artist, not a math. But Yeah, I was 18 years old when I officially first thought of the story, which is the age of my character.
I'm just looking up because both you and Yueh, right, like you're both published by the same person. Am I wrong? Am I spreading misinformation? Is it Wattpad Books?
Web,
No,
yeah,
yeah,
Wattpad. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, is that when I think of Wattpad, I think of the website, right?
Hmm.
Are they connected or are those completely separate?
Yeah, they've connected now. I am Webtoon. She writes for Wattpad, I assume, and Webtoon Wattpad kind of connected, and so we're releasing stories that are Webtoon Wattpad, which is comics and content from Webtoon as well. I mean,
Oh,
from Wattpad, yeah.
that's very cool. Yeah, because in middle school, graphic novels are seriously the most popular area of my library, and I've expanded that area exponentially. So I'm just really excited for my middle schoolers to get to high school to have your books to then look forward to because they're anime, manga, like that's just something that is really popular. And then on the flip side with Kate, with your books, like the like magic and tarot and the witch aspect. I mean, those are topics and themes that readers gravitate towards, I feel like. So very excited to have these three books in the world. Um, Let's see, let me check where we are. I think the next question I had has to do with all of us, and it's what was your reading life like as a young adult? Like growing up, you could go back into middle school and then into high school. It said, did you have any favorite book creators? And if so, did they influence your decision to become a book creator? So I'd love to just kind of have you share a little bit about your reading life throughout, and we can start with Kate.
My reading life, all growing up as a kid into adolescence, was my life. I grew up in a chaotic time and place. I grew up in Arizona, and as I said, I had a single mom. We were really poor, and we lived in rough neighborhoods, and life was uncertain. There was all kinds of stuff going on in the world that I had no control over as a very small, bookish kid. And when I say bookish, I mean, I was bookish. I was like the Scholastic, I don't know if they still have that, but the Scholastic list would come into our classroom and I would be like a drooling dog. I would be like, give me that list. I want all the books. And then the books would come and they'd be shiny and slippery. And it was like the most sexy thing that ever happened to me in my entire life. It was like this stack of fresh Scholastic. I'm like drooling talking about it.
And you smelled them, didn't you?
And I
They
smelled
that
them.
new
I
book
always smelled
smell.
books.
Yes.
I once spent a summer, it was like 115 degrees out because we lived in Arizona. I once spent an entire summer at the library and there was a reading contest. Guess who won the reading contest? Me, because all I did was read like all summer. I would get up, my mother would kick us out of the house because that was what happened back then. It was like, go outside. I don't care if it's 115 degrees, you need fresh air. I would make a beeline for the air-conditioned, quiet library where I had all the books I wanted. And I would pack a lunch and I would stay all day and I would sit in the stacks or, in a chair and I would read. And I was an Anglophile, go figure, who lived in like the Southwest, the desert. So I read The Secret Garden. I read A Little Princess. I read The Princess and Curdie. I read like every British sort of coming of age, not coming of age, but like middle school or YA novel I could get my hands on. I also loved Harriet the Spy, like everyone. And so the books I got my mitts on were just I would read whatever. I wanted to be a writer from the time I knew there were stories. And so it was always I was going to move to New York, leave Arizona in the dust, and write novels. And lo and behold, I did, because that's what happens when you're monomaniacal and you don't have a plan B. So all those books shaped me as a writer, reinforced my need. Like, it's like cooking, it's like eating a really good meal and then you want to cook it if you're a cook. I feel like reading a really good book makes you want to write a really good book. And so the two just like Yeah, and also I was safe in the library. I was safe in books. They took me out of everything, and that was magic. I mean, that's really the magic. It's the transport. It transports you, and I wanted to do that for other people. That was sort of my.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we are kindred spirits for so many reasons. I just love what you said about the library though, because I feel like people in the audience and us, we're librarians, we're authors. This is our truth. This is our reality. And especially everything that's happening in the world, we have to really remind people that maybe don't feel exactly that way or aren't as familiar with how safe and important the public library spaces are. So thank you for saying that. And then for the Scholastic book orders, they do still have them. I even use them in my middle school. I pass them out to my sixth graders. And when I was at fifth and sixth grade, I used my babysitting money, unbeknownst to my mom, and I would spend like $40 every month. And she was always wondering, where did you get all these books? I'm like, I don't know, like, yeah, and it was a babysitters club at that time and the sleepover friends and yeah. So exciting. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that heartfelt answer. All right. How about you, A? You tell us about your reading life when you were younger.
Oh my gosh, I read so much historical fantasy. So various Helen of Troy retellings, King Arthur retellings, Atlantis retellings. I think just historical retellings in general too. So like The Girl with the Pearl Earring, Esther, The Queen's Soprano. Yeah, I was really, really into that stuff. Um, and I don't know if I had specific favorite creators back then or even really now because it is so hard to narrow down. But I've always had a special soft spot for writers of Asian descent. So Kim Toy, for example, who wrote Rue, or Marilyn Chin, who wrote Revenge of the Mooncake Vixen. I kind of like with Kate, I always knew that I was going to be a writer, so I don't think anything would have really deterred me from that conviction. But it was always encouraging to see other people like me out in the field creating great works of art.
That's awesome. And I want to say, have you seen, this is middle grade, it's not YA, but you know the author Grace Lynn or of the author Grace Lynn?
I'm not sure.
Well, she is absolutely amazing, and everybody in the middle grade world knows her books. She has a book birthday today, and I feel like this would be a book that is kind of right up your alley, a little bit younger, but
Ooh.
it's called The Gate, the Girl, and the Dragon, and
Oh.
it's so good. So just a happy birthday book shout out when we're recording this, not the day you're watching this. Sorry, people. Make sure you wish her a happy book birthday on social media. So that's awesome. Thank you. All right. And Ingrid, what about you? Tell us about your reading life as a younger person.
Yeah, I read so much. My parents with my dad's job and stuff, we moved a lot when I was younger, so I moved to different like middle schools and high schools in Latin America and then eventually to the US and um because of that, I feel like I found my space in reading my books because my life, everything kind of moved constantly, but those books were always stable and there with me, and I could take my stories wherever. And I think, yeah, since I was really little, I was always reading. My first one, obviously, Harry Potter is where I discovered my love for reading, and then it came after that just a bunch of fantasy works, and then I discovered Japanese manga, and I read and I also watched. There was a lot of channels in Mexico, and I lived in Honduras as well, with anime TV like that had Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Sakura Card Captor, Sailor Moon, Inuyasha. So those were the things that I would watch, and it inspired me so much. So then I would find the mangas and online, and I try to get them, and it was really hard because I lived in Latin America. And then I discovered that I could buy some at bookstores, but yeah, so I try to collect as much as I could, but it was very limited. And because of that, I think I would just obsess over them, and I was like, oh, I want to just draw them so I can have my own, and I started just drawing a bunch from that. But yeah, I was always reading since I was very, very young, and it's been a great passion of mine to this day. Yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome. So kind of to follow up with that question, currently, I would love if you could give some of our viewers any recommendations of what are you currently loving? What's like modern current in your world? And it could be any level. What doesn't have to be YA, but if you have a YA, share that, and then anything else you might have been reading. And Ingrid, do you want to go off of, or do you need time to think? We can go
Yeah.
back to Kate.
No, I mean, I'm reading a bunch of webtoons always for research purposes. But I mean, right now, I said I started with Harry Potter, and I somehow I've reconnected. It's been years since I've thought about that, but I've reconnected with it, and I'm like again rereading all of them currently. And also a lot of webtoons. I really like Love for a Walk. I love also darker humor, like what's it called? Vampire Family. I mean, the classics, Lore Olympus. What else? Old ones that I love, Yumi Cells, Winter Woods. There's so much that I currently read, but yeah, I just have a bunch on my list, but yeah.
Never enough time, right? Too many books and things and not enough time. Thank you. All right. What about you, Kate? What's your reading life looking like currently, and what do you recommend?
My reading life looks like a stack of books taller than my head on a chair by my bed, where I just put them. I'm a compulsive book buyer, like I was when I was little. But I'm going to keep it to sort of the YA world, just because I have 3 books that I'm really excited about that I have sitting right here. And the first 2 are The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, and The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. And they are both by Mackenzie Lee. I'm going to hold them up. I love the covers. I love them. They're historical, hilarious, really brilliantly written, and so, so fun and really sexy. And then this book I haven't read yet, but my friend swears by it, The Power. And it's by Naomi Alderman. And I've just read a few pages of it, so I can recommend it because it sucked me right in. But yeah, those 3 books are on my YA TBR list right now, and they're at the top.
The Mackenzie Lee audiobook are absolutely amazing.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely amazing. I cannot recommend the audio enough. The narrator, the voices, it just is so good. It's so witty, it's so funny. I loved those books. Yeah.
I'm gonna listen.
Yeah, yeah. Yueh, what about you?
Sorry if you guys can hear massive thumping coming from my side. That's my toddler running around. But actually, kind of like with Ingrid, I also devour a lot of webtoons and webcomics. I lean toward, I think, kind of like the power fantasy webtoons, like Solo Leveling, or like the really tropey ones where like a villainess like gets reincarnated into a novel or something. I love those. But in terms of novels, the more recent one that I read, it's not YA, but I devoured it. It's called Recursion by Blake Crouch. It is a sci-fi, and it was so good. I flew through it. My body was aching by the end of it because I was not moving in my chair as I was reading through it. But yeah, it's fast-paced, it's mind-bendy, it's actually really touching, surprisingly. And it's pretty spoilery, so I won't say, but it deals with one of my favorite sci-fi tropes.
He's the author of Dark Matter. Have you read that one by him?
I
Oh,
haven't read that one yet, but that's next on the chopping block.
oh my God. And I read that like 6 years ago, and it was recommended to me by one of my 7th graders at the time. And
Oh, wow.
it's about the multiverse. And there's actually a series on one of the platforms now, I don't remember which, but they've made it into like a show. It just is,
Oh,
it's very well done. Yeah. So Blake, I'll have to check out that new one by him. That sounds great. And I wanted to share one book that I just recently finished. It is YA, and it is, I think it's by Ellen O. She does a lot of middle grade stuff. She does anthology, she does realistic fiction, she does all the genres, but this is, I think, her first debut into YA, and it's called The Colliding Worlds of Mina Lee. And it is sci-fi and fantasy, and the main character, actually, it was ironic because when I was reading some of the bios of you and then some of the books, she is she writes web comics, that the one that she has started is just boring, and her friends are like, you have got to do something different. Nobody is interested in your story, your plot. She wants to be an artist, and her father is absolutely against that for a variety of reasons. And so something happens, and this big storm happens, and this lightning bolt occurs, and she wakes up and she's in her house, but not her house. So she is in a parallel universe. Like, she's in a different timeline of her life. And it is so good, and it's so different from anything that Ellen has written before, and it kind of made me think a little bit, honestly, of Dark Matter, which is weird how all these things are coming together in this conversation. But I highly recommend that book. So I think we have just about 4 or 5 minutes left. So I'm hoping we can wrap up. Maybe if you're working on anything currently that you are able to share, we would love to hear what readers can look forward to next. So Yueh, do you want to start? Oh, we have 2.5 minutes. Oh my gosh, speed talk.
Okay, speed talk. I'm working on a big boy. It's going to be pretty dense. It's an adult science fantasy because that's my jam. And it's based on the time period of the Korean War. And it's going to feature a mysterious metal moon, a zombie-like disease, and a soulmate-esque magic system. Yeah, very excited.
Good. That's a good pitch also. I think you've been working on that. Ingrid, you want to share what you got coming up for readers?
Yeah, so I've been on break and I'm returning with my season 4, May 23rd. So a lot of people have been waiting on that. And also my third volume, sorry, is coming out sometime early next year. So yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations. And Kate, what about you?
I have an adult novel coming out next summer called Good Company with HarperCollins, and I just handed in what I hope is the final draft. And I'm really excited about it. It's about misogyny, and it's very adult. It's about misogyny and all the things that go along with it. And I'm also writing a detective series under a pseudonym, Sydney Graves. And the first one came out last fall, and I'm writing the second one now. And it's called Saguaro City. The first one is called the Arizona Triangle. It's set in Arizona. Female detective, works for an all-female detective agency, and it's so much fun.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. My to-be read list has really expanded, and like you, I have piles everywhere. But I'm gonna wrap up because we've run out of time, but I just want to thank all of you so much for this amazing conversation, and I can't wait for readers to have a chance to read all 3 of your books and beyond. And thank you to all the librarians who joined us today. Next, we're going to have the lunch keynote with Kiese Lemon. So please enjoy the rest of the conference and make sure to add all 3 of these titles to your library collections. So have a great afternoon, everybody.